Story 1. They said that because of my childhood trauma, my amygdala was damaged, and that is why I am unable to control my emotions. This person was a very abusive ex. Story 2. Mills said, I'll make sure my son never raises that child of yours. When I told him and her I was pregnant, my mom said it was the right thing to do. Story 3. I have been clean from meth addiction for 22 years. I have been with my spouse for 18 years, but we are currently going through a slow breakup, separation, and co-parenting situation as flatmates over the past year. Last night, when I mentioned that I would like to get a referral from the general practitioner for our 13-year-old son to see a child psychologist for an ADHD assessment, which we had agreed to do 3 to 4 months ago after his last parent-teacher interview, she strongly disagreed and questioned, "What's the point?" She expressed that she does not believe in medication and will not allow him to take medication for it if he is diagnosed. I responded, "Let's see what a doctor thinks," which made her quite angry. She yelled, "So you would let him take medication for it? If that's the case, you've lost that argument." I didn't realize it was an argument until that moment. I fell silent in response to her yelling and said, "I just think we should see what a medical professional thinks. Getting a referral to a psychologist is only step 1. She then walked out but immediately returned and accused me. "You only want him diagnosed so you can take his medication for speed. Isn't that right? Is that it?" I have been sober for 22 years and have not used amphetamines since 3 years before I even met her. I have raised 5 children, yet she basically implied that I want to use our son to steal his medication to get high. It felt like a huge leap from 0 to 100 in an instant. She called me a junkie because I think our child might have ADHD, just like his eldest sister who was recently diagnosed. That really hurt. Story 4. Completely unsolicited, after a really good day. I love you, but I don't like you at all. I was 9. Thank you, Mom. Story 5. My ex-mother said, "You're being dramatic," after I was injured and nearly killed. What kind of parent does one have to be to say that to their own child? Story 6. I was seriously struggling and was told, "I can't save you," by an ex. I thought, just take me to the hospital. What is wrong with you? You can at least try. What's stopping you? Yes, I survived, in case you couldn't tell. Story 7. You're weird, but in a snarky manner. It would have been different if it had been playful. This is pretty much the fastest way for me to never feel comfortable being myself around someone again. Story 8. Mom was supposed to abort you. I wish she had. It was a lie. I asked my dad before he passed away 3 weeks ago. Story 9. My mom told me she loathes the day I was born. She also blamed me for my brother's suicide. I was the last person to see him alive. I couldn't stop him from leaving. I tried. I don't speak to her anymore. Story 10. I guess my father thought I wasn't going to live through my depression. So one day he said, "An insurance policy needs to be taken out on you, so if you die, at least you'll leave your family something." I almost couldn't contain my anger and even cried. Who says something like this? Story 11. My first girlfriend ended things by saying, "Honestly, you were just a stepping stone to better things," and implied that I was poor after I bought her and her family Christmas presents, yet I didn't even receive a card from her. Story 12. I was listening attentively during class in 5th grade when my teacher suddenly asked one of my classmates to use a conjunction in a sentence. In a panicked manner, clearly unprepared, she blurted out, "Is ugly, but she is smart." Everyone laughed, and I could see the shock on my teacher's face. She told the class that it wasn't a nice thing to say. I smiled through the pain. I wanted to cry because I had been smiling at her to help boost her confidence to speak. But hearing her answer made me extremely sad. I kept smiling throughout the class to show that it didn't affect me. After class, she quickly apologized and said she was really sorry. For years, I believed that she didn't mean to offend me, or I made myself believe that she didn't. I think she was just stating what she believed was a fact. Somehow, that fact has stuck with me ever since. Story 13. My dad went through a difficult time recently and sent me a picture of himself with a shotgun in his mouth. A few weeks later, during an argument, my ex-partner said he would want to kill himself too if he had to be related to me, and that he wished I would witness it if he ever went through with it. The sad part is that I still talk to him after that and I still miss him. Story 14. You are not ugly and you deserve friends. A girl said this to me in middle school. I have moved on and she can no longer affect me. Story 15. When I saw you, I thought you were pregnant. An old coworker. I'm a little overweight, but I by no means have a gut. Also, the classic. You would be pretty if you were thinner. I grew up in a toxic environment where I struggled with eating disorders starting at age 11. Even at my thinnest, when I weighed less than 100 pounds, I was still considered too fat. Comments about my appearance hurt, especially now that I finally have a healthy relationship with food after over 10 years of struggling with eating disorders and starvation. I have never been one to care about others' appearances. I value a person's morals, integrity, kindness, and intelligence. I've found that people who obsess over how others look and judge them based on appearance often lack these important traits, which is truly sad. Story 16. I had to get tested for autism spectrum disorder because otherwise they do not know why I am the way I am, and they cannot manage my situation anymore if we do not find out what is wrong with me. Story 17. She is unattractive, she seeks attention, she talks excessively, and that is why she has no friends. I do not understand how anyone can tolerate being friends with her. Story 18. My mom compared raising me to being in a concentration camp. I'm Jewish, which probably makes it worse. Story 19. A tie between good little Nazi, your parents must be so proud, and good job. You did it despite the high-functioning autism or whatever it is you have. Both were customers. Story 20. That my kind is less than human. They said my people rank somewhere between animals and humans. Story 21. He was leaving, saying he was going to win it all. The house, the kids, everything. You will be left with nothing. He did leave. We sold the house. I have the kids and am happily retired. Story 22. Aunt, why did you get such an ugly dog? But the most hurtful remarks came from closer to home. Sister, if you can't get into Harvard, you haven't done much, have you? After I totally aced my graduate record examinations, but admittedly not Harvard level. I was literally stepping out of the house to go to my wedding when my mom said, I always wanted to ask you, what happened between you and your ex? When I told my mom we were expected, for context, my dad was terminally ill, and I was taking care of everything. My wife and I were mid-level managers at that time, and my mom never worked after marriage. After years, literally my entire life of holding everything together, taking care of my parents and family, having a successful career, a loving marriage, and a wonderful child, and taking care of her needs for years, including several medical procedures and surgeries, I had to hear, you were not the son I had hoped you'd be. From, drumroll, yes, once again, my mom. I could continue, but I have moved on. I found my peace. I am stronger and a better person than any of them. Story 23. Your dad would roll over in his grave if he knew. My mom told me this when I was 14 because I dated a black girl. God forbid I am a lesbian. My dad passed away when I was 8. She moved on and dated a man 3 months after he died. I was just a normal teenager in love with someone who was there for me, and her mom was too. They were the sweetest people I knew. Story 24. I was hopping on my bike after getting candy at the store. I was 10 and I was happy. A grown man said, "Get your ass out of here before I skin it." I sped off on my bike and ran into my house, crying. My older sister was at home with her boyfriend. She asked me what happened, and I told her. We all got in her car and found the man walking up the street. My sister got out. I thought she was going to talk to him. She beat that man badly. Here's the thing. What he said to me hurt, and I'll never forget it. But seeing him so hurt made me decide never to tell my sister about anything like that again. Story 25. Other than narcissistic smear campaigns, someone once told me I should only date women who are overweight because I am legally blind and cannot drive, suggesting that attractive women would never want to be with me. Story 26. I had a boss call me completely useless and say that the company would be better off without me. The worst part was that it happened in a meeting room full of colleagues. He then said, "Thank your God she," referring to a female colleague, "is sitting here, hence you are getting off easy. Oh, the good old days." Story 27. Oh, that boyfriend doesn't count. I was that boyfriend. I soon discovered that she had been cheating on me for much of the relationship, or perhaps she wasn't since it was only a relationship to me and not to her. Story 28. Someone mentioned that I seemed knowledgeable about food while I was working at Chipotle. Clearly, it was a jab at my weight. It hurt. Story 29. You are too damaged for anyone else to tolerate you. Only I do. You don't have friends. They don't like you, but only tell me about it. You are too emotional. Words are just words and shouldn't hurt you so much. What is your problem? Love is for kids. Don't expect me to be in love with you because you are not worth it. Story 30. My mother said that I am unattractive and that no one wants to look at me. That really hurts because it is my experience, and she has been unkind to me over the past few years. I also feel anger and resentment because she undermines my experiences with looks-based discrimination and blames my personality for why people do not like me. However, when she gets angry or wants to be hurtful, she insults my appearance. The manipulation is very hurtful. Story 31. My mother said that when I was 7, I was trying to seduce her husband, my biological father. She told me that if abortion had been legal, she would have terminated the pregnancy because she wanted another boy. Story 32. You are an embarrassment to this family, Mom said. All because I said no to wearing a baggy shirt she chose for me that, in her words, would hide my stomach and love handles. I was 9. Story 33. I was looking through some texts recently. I had an argument with my parents about a year ago. I am 30 years old at this point. I sent them a roughly 10-paragraph text explaining the family dynamics between us, how it affects me as an adult, how it constitutes childhood abuse, and how their own abusive childhood trickled down to me being abused and neglected by them. I really poured my heart out. This was in response to my parents insisting that I seek therapy, and that the next time I speak to them, it must be professionally moderated by a therapist that I pay for. The next message I received from them was 4 days later, asking if Venmo was acceptable to refund the $80 I spent on groceries the day before our argument, where I had planned to cook them dinner, which was still sitting in their refrigerator. Sometimes the worst response is no real response at all. Story 34. My guidance counselor told me, "You're not smart enough for community college and too overweight for the military. You need to get a job and embrace working minimum wage for the rest of your life." Story 35. The time a former girlfriend suggested that I get a tattoo of George Clooney's face on my face. I don't think she was kidding. Story 36. When my husband and I first started dating, he was still in college while I was already working, so I was paying for most things we did. My brother told me, "He's using you, and once he graduates, he will find someone a lot prettier than you." Story 37. Would you like a bicycle for Christmas? Yes, please. I was so happy. Then Christmas came, and there was no bicycle. I was 10. Story 38. After giving my all in my last relationship, which lasted about 3 years, I dedicated my time, sacrificed many friendships, worked, studied, and still contributed all my spare time to her. In return, she called me an idiot and accused me of not caring for her, despite everything I had done. She said I didn't deserve to be happy because I didn't try to do anything. A few months later, I met another girl and we entered a relationship. We became a couple a day before my birthday. On my birthday, I found her social media and saw she had reposted something along the lines of, "I drink Red Bull because if I wanted a white monster, I would call my ex." Both statements hit hard. Story 39. She said she loved the potential of who I could be and never loved me for who I was. One of my biggest insecurities was never feeling good enough for someone else. She told me, "I am better than you." Well, maybe she was better looking or doing better in life, but at least I know she is not better than me on the inside. Story 40. My mother told me the only reason she had me was that my father was often on the road, so she didn't want to be alone with a dangerous person who was targeting women alone. They caught him just before I was born. and she said she was disappointed. She had me for nothing. Story 41. Many years ago, I was engaged to a woman for a while. She was insistent that we have children, even though we were arguing a lot. All I ever wanted was to be a dad. But I suggested that we get couples therapy so we could love each other better and find our peace together. I really didn't want to bring children into a home where mom and dad were fighting all the time. One night, during a conversation, she looked at me coldly and said, "It doesn't make any difference. You're nothing but a sperm donor to me anyway." Unsurprisingly, we broke up shortly after that. I never got to be a dad. Story 42. You are just my toy for the night. This was said during an argument that started after he told a joke about me being foolish. Story 43. A boy broke up with me because I wouldn't be intimate, as I was only 15 at the time. He mentioned that I had yellow teeth, which wasn't true. However, as a 15-year-old girl, I was mortified. Story 44. I feel like a failure and I didn't do anything wrong. I'm autistic, so I often forget things. I forgot that I shouldn't do laundry when my friend is taking a shower because the water gets cold. That's what she told me tonight. Story 45. You need to stop pretending to be mentally ill and stop being lazy. You need to grow up. This statement was made by a teacher addressing our entire class last year. Story 46. My mother abandoned us when I was 5. Before then, she had taken me and left my dad. For 8 months, she left me at a person named Don's house. Don was a pedophile who subjected me to unspeakable acts of depravity, and he was a heroin dealer. My mother was a heroin addict. After about 8 months, my father found me and took me back. They reconciled, and I never told my dad until years later, by which time Don was already dead. Later that year, she left on Christmas Eve and took everything in the house with her. I didn't see her for another 12 years until I was lying in intensive care with a skull fracture. I ended up moving in with her because she was my mom, and it seemed like someone had changed. I bought a house on the other side of hers, where there was a permanent easement that crossed her property line as my driveway. She set me up to get arrested by asking me to stop by one of her friends' houses and pick up a case of canned goods. Unbeknownst to me, there was a bag of marijuana in the center of the box with the other canned goods. I got pulled over in front of my driveway and was arrested. She ended up stealing all my money. When I confronted her and brought up the topic of involving the police because $1,600 of my money was gone, this is what she told me. "You are such a worthless person. This is exactly why I left when you were 5. I should have taken you out of me with a coat hanger. I prayed every time I left you at Don's that he would kill you instead of just abusing you. The only thing you have ever done for me was be a burden. You are now banned from the property. You are no longer allowed anywhere here, and I will send your possessions from your house when I get to it." Story 47. When I was a child, our neighbors and some of my relatives often told me, "You are just an adopted child," or "You don't belong here." Nobody told me the truth until I was 7. Growing up, my relatives, including my aunts, uncles, cousins, and even my adoptive siblings, made sure I would never forget this fact, as they frequently reminded me, even in the presence of others. Story 48. The children can never be yours or follow you because they belong to the family. My divorce. Story 49. My ex told me I was not worth the time or effort to try to repair our relationship after he cheated on me. Story 50. You're not depressed because you're still doing things you enjoy. This was told to me by my wife when my father passed away and I was dealing with deep grief. Story 51. My ex told me that I was bad luck and the reason he was struggling financially. He said he was fine before he met me. The economy was in recession, but that affected me for years. Story 52. My sister. After I asked for family support when I came forward to the police about the childhood molestation I endured, told me directly to cheer up and stop acting like a victim. I believed she had my back in everything, and my whole world began to crumble. Story 53. Something that has stuck with me is when my ex-partner got his mistress pregnant, a situation I was unaware of. We broke up and I reacted strongly. He said, "You're just upset because you're unable to have children." I am still young, and I don't know if that is true, but it hurt me deeply because I want children one day, and we had planned on eventually having a family together. I hope he is wrong. Story 54. After deciding she didn't want to look after her son, my stepson's mother basically didn't see him for about a year while he lived with me and his dad. During that time, I was the person dealing with the school and trying to be a good mother to him since his own mother couldn't be bothered. She became annoyed because she didn't want me to be involved, even though her son lived in my home, and told my husband, she can't have her own kids, so she's trying to steal mine. No, love, you couldn't be bothered to be a decent parent and abandoned your son after he took an overdose. All I wanted to do was ensure he was loved and safe. Story 55. Get off the game. You're weighing down the servers. In reality, my best friend of 4 years told me that he regretted every moment spent with me and called me a brain-dead hypocrite who should end his life. This is all I can remember. There may be worse things, but I'm not sure. Story 56. Someone called me a pedophile recently, which is by far the most vile thing I've ever experienced, and I have a pretty thick skin. He was drunk and foolish, but it took a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy to avoid getting angry about it repeatedly. Story 57. You're the spitting image of the man who harmed me, and I wish I had given you up for adoption like your sister. My mother. Story 58. I told my dad I had suicidal thoughts, and he said, well, that's unfortunate that you didn't succeed. Then he laughed and added, not that you'd have the courage to actually do it anyway. Story 59. I think it's worse when you hear about what someone said to you behind your back. All I can think about is how my dad last year called me a disgrace and a disappointment over how I've been living my love life, being a daddy's girl and the favorite because I did everything they asked me while emotionally manipulating me all my life, just to hear that he and my mom don't believe in my dance career just because I moved across the country to the Midwest. You've been training all your life just to throw our money away. Like what? I'm currently trying out for a professional dance academy to be a principal ballerina. What do you mean? Their guilt trip is overwhelming. It's been ongoing for a little over a year now, and I'm mentally exhausted. Story 60. I had a friend of 22 years treat me like I was breaking up with a high school crush when I was going through my divorce. I was close to the edge, and she went on a beach getaway with my cousins when I needed support. The same weekend I moved out of the family home, she had Easter lunch with those same cousins. I wasn't even invited. This is the same friend I drove over an hour to be on suicide watch for. I missed an important exam, booked her into a clinic, and created a support network for her people for meal and watch rotation for the next month. Even though we didn't live in the same city, she couldn't even be bothered to send me a message when I was crumbling. She also repeatedly dismissed my concerns, suggesting that I could handle everything and shouldn't keep discussing the same issues, as it was quite boring for her to hear me bring things up more than once. I met up with her after the weekend she spent with my cousins and expressed how hurt I was by her seemingly selfish behavior. She looked me in the eyes and said, I have done nothing wrong and will not apologize. My heart shattered, and I blocked her on every platform. She now hangs out with my cousins, and I no longer have any contact with that side of the family. As a side note, I attended a wedding of a cousin from that same circle and purposefully did not interact with her. I found out after the wedding that my dad started a rumor that I was taking drugs. I don't speak to any of them anymore. Story 61. Someone once told me I would never amount to anything. Interestingly, it motivated me more than they ever intended. Story 62. I was told that I would never amount to anything unless I got married, and that when everything failed, I should call them because, being successful, they would pick me up. I heard this from my eldest brother and sister. I cut them off, moved abroad, and to this day, the only reason I wake up and leave my house is to prove to myself that they were wrong. I have not really recovered from that. Story 63. That I am still traumatized from being sexually assaulted in my workplace a few years ago. Story 64. No one will ever love you. My big sister told me this when I was 8 or 9. It made me have low self-esteem from a young age, and there was so much more than that in the house of shame. I have been in therapy for years, trying my best to heal for the sake of my children. Story 65. Some people approached me and said, nice hair. My mom was the only one who commented differently. She said, You look like a homeless person because of your hair. We need to cut it off. Story 66. I worked in customer support, and one person became extremely upset and yelled that I should have been harmed as a baby before disconnecting. I couldn't even get angry at that point. Story 67. No one will ever hurt you. He then proceeded to try and manipulate me for the next 5 years, referring to me as wife material to my friends. Story 68. No man is going to love you because you are a single mother. That came from my mother after divorcing my physically abusive husband. 30 years later, I am still single with past relationships that never amounted to anything. I believe the abuse I endured from my ex and what my mother told me affected my mindset to the point that I only chose emotionally unavailable men. I essentially sabotaged myself. Story 69. My daughter passed away at the age of 7 years ago. She was very ill and will always be the love of my life. My mother has told me more than once that I am not worthy of having been her mother. It destroyed me. Story 70. My dad, 60, told me 37 last year that he wishes he had ended my life as a child so he could have lived freely. It's quite shocking considering I was never a problem, cost them nothing, and have been financially independent since I was 14 years old. It blew my mind that this man was a federal law enforcement officer for 34 years in Canada. Story 71. When are you going to stop being unemployed? I was extremely depressed, almost suicidal, and without a job at the time. It was my friend's girlfriend, and honestly, if it weren't for that, I would have confronted her. Story 72. If there is any good in the universe, this would be the last New Year's I would ever see. It was a complete stranger on the internet whom I had never interacted with. Completely out of the blue. I didn't even say anything controversial, so I still don't understand it. That was on New Year's Day of 2018. Please be kind, everyone. People will remember that throwaway comment you forgot you made. Story 73. My mother screamed at me, "I'm so sorry. Forgive me for desperately wishing my child could just be normal. And also, people like you don't get to live normal lives." These words still echo in my mind now and then. Story 74. When I was in high school, I was on the football team. The kid who was the quarterback had a dad who encouraged me to use my size to protect his son. I missed a block, and his son ended up leaving the game with a concussion. Story 75. No one likes you because you're weird, was my mom's response when I asked her how to make friends at the age of 5. Story 76. Dentist. You have such a beautiful smile. Have you thought about using whitening strips? Me. No, I have not. Why would I want to ruin my nice smile by making it unnaturally white? Story 77. When I was about 11, I had a big sister from the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. I was being sarcastic with a friend, and she told me, "That's why you don't have any friends." The joke's on her. I don't have any friends because of social anxiety and being allergic to unkind people. Story 78. I caught my stepfather cheating on my mother and told her. A week later, he said, "When your mother kills herself, it will be your fault." That was brutal. It affected me deeply for a long time. I'm still working through it in therapy. It didn't help that she eventually did attempt to take her life, but she is fine now. Story 79. My teenage boyfriend broke up with me and started dating another girl. He said, "At least she's not overweight like you." Story 80. When I was 11, a boy at church ran up and kissed me on the mouth and ran away. All the other kids saw, and it got back to my dad. Back at the house, he told me that I was damaged goods now and that I was like a dog in heat. Story 81. Their favorite thing about me was the way my face looks when I am severely depressed and staring off into space because I have no energy to move. My absolute worst, their favorite version of me. Story 82. You are really intelligent despite not fitting conventional standards of attractiveness. You are aware of your appearance, correct? Therefore, you understand that I am not being unkind. It is simply the truth. I do not know what happened to the child after 6th grade, but I hope he is like me, lying awake at night, replaying and cringing at everything he ever said that ranged from inaccurate to unacceptable to ill-timed to completely embarrassing. Story 83. My brother asked, Are you sure you aren't into him because he's nice and he likes you? He also mentioned, I wasn't excited about your engagement, and it upset me as I felt it took attention away from our upcoming wedding. All of these events were several months apart, and we were engaged privately. Story 84. I was shopping with my children when another mom approached me and told me I needed to leave because I was scaring her children. I'm handicapped in one arm and have a few scars. I was amazed at her boldness in saying this. I had a basket full of groceries and responded, sure, if you pay for all my items right now. She thought about it briefly, almost agreed, but I guess she couldn't afford it, so she told me to leave again. I just laughed and walked away. Story 85. My manager was bullying me at work, and human resources needed witness statements from everyone else, and in turn accidentally copied me into the replies. Every single one said a variation of, yes, the manager probably is bullying him, but he's a bit of a nerd, off-putting, and talks too much. Frankly, I would bully him too. Story 86. I had my first suicide attempt when I was just 10 years old, about a month after my father told me, don't bother killing yourself because I'm going to kill you. This happened after my dog ate my chocolate Easter bunny, but she was fine since it was milk chocolate. She only had an upset stomach for a few hours. I will never forgive him. Story 87. I am polyamorous, as is my nesting partner. He has had overnights with partners before, so I thought I was allowed to do the same. I went to a hotel with my boyfriend. My nesting partner was upset, saying that he didn't want me to go and that I wasn't choosing us by going. He went so far as to try to kick me out and get rid of my stuff, so I couldn't leave to prevent him from doing so. He even spoke about harming himself to prevent me from leaving and told me that we were done if I went. I wasn't going to be bullied over this, especially since it was my first overnight with anyone. My nesting partner had plenty of experiences in the past, and I always supported him. While I was at the hotel, he continued to send me hurtful messages. I begged him to stop with the cruelty. His response? He hoped that I would enjoy my experience, get pregnant, and miscarry. He also said that if that doesn't happen, I'll be disappointed. But here's hoping that any child you have is as unworthy as his own. My boyfriend has a 6-year-old child with special needs. My nesting partner knows this. He also knows that one of the most painful experiences of my life was when I lost my baby in 2009. It left me with mental and emotional scars that I cannot overcome. What he said sent me into such a breakdown that my boyfriend had to gently extract me from the hotel room bathroom while I was sobbing. Bless his heart. He had no idea what was going on until I showed him the messages that my nesting partner had sent me. My nesting partner wants me to forgive and forget this so we can move forward in our relationship. I don't think I can. My heart hurts too much from it. Story 88. You've gained weight. Thanks. That put a smile on my face. I'm 97 pounds, you jerk. Clearly, that comment is not helping. Story 89. My daughter has mental health issues, and her life was in a constant state of emotional chaos, impacting everyone in the house, as well as her own daily living experiences. It took months of pushing for diagnoses before she finally received two, and it was a relief to have some answers. After discussing her individualized education program team, doctor, and psychologist, we opted to test medications to improve her quality of life, and they did. She could finally feel like a normal child and not like everything she did was somehow wrong. When I told my mother that we finally had some answers, she said we wouldn't have had any issues with my daughter if we had been more understanding parents. My sister, a nurse, accused me of labeling her so I could medicate her and silence her. That was over 20 years ago, and I have never forgotten how that made me feel. That was also when I stopped talking to my family about my daughter, and I eventually cut them out of our lives for various reasons. Story 90. I am actively looking for your replacement. Years later, I remarried. We celebrate 18 years together today, the best decision I ever made. I love her more than life itself. When those dark days come, and they will, be confident that there is still light. It just might require a little patience. Story 91. I would have cared how you felt if you had told me this earlier. My friend said while trying to win an argument in which I expressed that I feel unappreciated in our friendship. Story 92. Not necessarily the meanest, but it really stuck with me and made me see things differently. I had a really difficult medical exam to prepare for, requiring 3 days of preparation, which was horrible. I told my mom because she had the same exam for the same reason, and her response was, without missing a beat, "You can't handle that exam." What a nice thing to say to your daughter who's in pain and anxious. Later, she told me she said that because she felt horrible during her exam, but guess what? I didn't feel bad. In fact, I felt pretty normal, anxiety aside. It felt really good to feel positive during the exam because it felt like I proved her wrong. Story 93. You and your brother look so much alike, but he is attractive and you are not. That was during my high school years. My appearance and personality changed over the years to the point where, when I saw this girl several years later, she openly expressed her interest in being intimate with me. Guess what I said? Story 94. My mom has this story she loves telling me from time to time. When I was born, I was really unattractive. She says I was so unappealing that my uncle mistook another child for my mom's baby when he came to the hospital to visit her after my birth. She also says I used to cry a lot and not sleep at night, so when my father came home from work and found me crying, he would get really annoyed. She has shared this story multiple times jokingly and calls me the ugly duckling as I grew up to be pretty. I dislike how she has diminished my self-esteem and continues to do so with this story. Story 95. While my mother and I were shopping for items for my wedding, she told me, "You should try to find another mom. I don't think I'm that great. I don't really want to do this anymore." Or something along those lines. So yeah, that was cool. Story 96. A lot of hurtful things have been said to me, but one of the worst experiences was when I grew up overweight. There was a group of boys around 10 years old who terrorized me when I was 5. They didn't live in our neighborhood but would come in carrying large butcher knives, chasing me while screaming and yelling. They would taunt me, saying, "Come on, fatty. Stop so we can cut some of that fat off for you." I guess that's more of a bullying experience, but I'll never forget their voices and their horrible words. I've lost my weight. I went from 300 pounds to 140 pounds, and I did it for myself, not for society. Story 97. I don't know if I am really the meanest, but a boss told me that you were somehow subjected to a personal attack in front of others during your childhood without any reason. I am shy even at work. Side note, I am aware that I lack social intelligence, but I disregard her opinions because I know she is just an average person with undue power in a modern corporation. I also understand that psychology has often been a favorite shortcut for average people who believe they are above average in some way. I recognize that the modern world is over-socialized, not the opposite. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.